I'm Mark Unger, producer of Roundtable. Because we find this presentation so special, we really would like for you to see this. Please watch.
Good evening, and welcome to Single Shot at Roundtable on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Today we will be talking about significance of photography for history of New York. New York. City so nice, they photographed it twice as much as they photographed any other place on the planet probably, but regardless of how many photos of New York exist, they in a way unbalanced. Some areas and some buildings and some structures which everybody considers iconic and know very well, like Statue of Liberty or Empire State Building, are photographed in abundance, but there are some buildings which are just as interesting in their own way. They tell just as dramatic of the story, but this not even hidden, but rather humble gems, being in plain sight, being often omitted, avoided, ignored, and don't get their justice. And in order to talk about those humble gems of New York, we invited brilliant photographer Joe Raskin, who devoted big part of his talent, career, and significant amount of time to photographing those buildings that tourists would never notice, and New Yorker would pass by just because they always been there. But that totally worth taking the aim and working on the photograph. Hello, Joe. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
And tell me where you began this project and what was a reason to choose that rather humble subject, not magnificent structures everybody's starting with.
It sort of started for me when in college when I received a copy of a book called New York in the 1930s, which is the collection of the photographs of Berenice Abbott from her Change in New York series. It was amazing to see that she had documented the photographs, look at the city as it was at that point. In anticipation that the way the things were changing at that point, and the things would be changing from that point on, and it clicked with me. It appealed to me just to get photographs of the non-touristy parts of the city. That the people might not, the people as you point out, the people who have come to visit the city might not pay attention to. And that people if you live here, you're used to it, and it's not, and they might not think it's as special as they actually are.
Oh, well, first of all, this is a really great example to be inspired by, and as I understand, what struck you most is the difference between what you can actually see at the time when you was looking at those photographs and how the place and the building and the structure looked when the pictures was taken, right?
Yes, exactly. That's just put in the context of everyday life. To show things as they are, show things as people live and are used to it.
So basically, you was fascinated by the visible representation of dynamics, and you decided that you need to capture that particular stage. When it was all happening in 1970s, I believe you mentioned.
I started when I started to use my first camera in the 1970s. I went away from it and went back to it. I was at that point focusing closer in on shots of windows. Windows, doorways, and then eventually pulled back to show things as more the existing buildings.
So you started with doors and windows, the part of architecture, and
Yes,
then went into more of a landscape kind of approach.
I zoom more of a landscape approach. I zoom back more.
Any specific reason why it happened, or it just was natural?
Just natural evolution.
All right.
I was almost too shy to get going close. So I pull back more. Then also having different lenses on my camera that I could take from a greater distance. And that made things better.
Well, there is this saying that can't see the forest behind the trees. So
that's right.
You found a way to actually see the forest and capture it in its entirety.
That's right.
And as I understand, you didn't just travel virtually every neighborhood in the city by now, but you also put it for yourself in a context, and you actually knew what you're looking at. And if you didn't, when you was taking pictures, you later on would research and find out in many instances.
I like to look things up. I like to know the history of the neighborhood. I like to see what it looks like, what it looked like in the past as well. One of the things I took advantage of is the various websites that have old photographs of different neighborhoods. The New York Public Library's old NYC website had a lot of things, old photographs from even further back. And so I like not that I want to take the same shots, but just put in context the way things used to look.
Oh, this is great. Do you have any favorite neighborhood, the one you believe have the most significance in terms of humble gems of New York?
Well, the neighborhood I grew up in, it was in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, so that's always rung a bell with me. And then living in, later on living in Rochdale Village in Queens, which is not historic, but part of an older neighborhood. And then after that, in Astoria and in Sunnyside in Queens, which had various characteristics in it as well. They all had a sense of uniqueness to them.
Well, positively. So your home neighborhoods at different times was your favorite.
That's right. That's right. And it also widened out for me as well. And that one of the reasons why going into the Bronx a lot has appealed to me is because that's where my dad grew up, and to visit his old neighborhood, to go around other neighborhoods like that as well. Always had a certain appeal to me.
Oh, and what about the city? I mean, almost everywhere in the city, you turn somewhere and you either see Chrysler, Empire State Building, or another structure like this, but there are still those neighborhoods that are virtually not known to anybody.
Every neighborhood has a different story to it.
Absolutely.
And that is taking the same shots over and over again did not appeal to me. Or in the same block, the same neighborhood, the same houses all the time. So I would start to wander around, going around Hamilton Heights and Manhattan, for example, is a completely different neighborhood to me. Going through, the other day I was in Fort George and in Inwood, which really appealed to me as well.
Oh, it's a beautiful area.
They're not neighborhoods that if you even if you live in the city all your life, you might not know about. And then just to go around there with a sense of discovery, wanting to see what things look like, had a major appeal to me.
Oh, indeed, Inwood is one of the most remarkable spots of the city.
Very much so.
In terms of its visual and energy and you name it. But if you would go to the furthest part of it, that probably would be what, Coney Island, right?
Well, not even, I would say the Rockaways in Queens. Coney Island, yes. Coney Island has its own characteristics to it as well. And I'm not just talking about the amusement park aspects of it.
Of course.
But Brighton Beach has always had a certain appeal, a certain look to it. It's like one of the few places outside the Bronx we have Art Deco architecture. Bay Ridge in Brooklyn has that also.
Bay Ridge is also
But
beautiful.
also, but one thing, for example, in the story is not so much in Sunnyside, but a little bit in Sunnyside. But there's a type of row house in Queens called, and in parts of Brooklyn called Matthews Model Flats, which if you live in the neighborhoods, you know them. Maybe not by name, but if you look it up, if you Google it or if you look it up elsewhere, very distinctive architecture, very distinctive exterior brickwork. And it's normal working class housing, but with a very high sense of imagination went into building it, and you don't find it elsewhere. The other, going in, one place I found also discovering Staten Island, which was from the time I started taking photographs to today. I spent more time on Staten Island than I have in my life before that.
Well, Staten Island in many ways are the most underestimated borough, and it definitely have a lot of photographical content.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it after this brief pause. Right, we're back, and we was talking about buildings that are unique, and there is another quality of unique buildings in New York that are not landmark or iconic building. They're disappearing.
That's right. One of the ones that I went to look at about a week or two ago was in Kew Gardens on a street called Curzon Road. It's about 120 years old, which is it's the same age as the greatest city of New York. When all five boroughs became one. It's due to be demolished. It's very unfortunate. It's not landmarked. It's just in a sense it's another house on a small street. But it was purchased. It's being demolished to make room for an apartment house of about 20 units. It's probably too late to do anything to save it. But at the same time, I made note of that when I posted it on my photo blog, and I've made note of it elsewhere. That let this be an inspiration to people to pay more attention to what's around them.
Absolutely.
That in the same way, in a small way, that when the demolition of Pennsylvania Station in the 1960s brought to the need to landmark buildings like that. There's probably nothing of great significance to it in and of itself. Probably no one famous lived there or anything else like that, but just a beautiful old building. and it's going to go. And we need to pay more attention to the architectural heritage of the city to do something and to ensure that that there's a record of it, and that some of these buildings stay around.
Well, indeed. Regrettably, city being almost a living organism and having buildings as its flesh, need to regenerate sometimes, need to grow in some directions, and unfortunately we can't keep every building in there, but we need to pay attention to the ones we see right now, because maybe tomorrow we wouldn't have them.
Right, which is I'm not suggesting that every old building be landmarked, or no, that everyone needs to be saved, but at the same time, which is why it was mentioned in the first segment about the Matthews Mile Flats, that there's a very high, that's a handful of them have landmark status, but not a lot of them do, and that they deserve as much as brownstones do.
Absolutely, I know exactly where you're coming from. Well, if we can't preserve all of them, at least we can pay more attention and try to capture them at least in the pictures.
And have a record of them, which is one of the reasons why Berenice Abbott's photographs appeal to me so much, that she made a record of what things how things were, and then recognizing things are changing. And then there were other photographers also, Arnold Eagle about the same time, who did that. Later on in the 1940s, 1950s, Todd Webb, who, if anybody had the chance to see the exhibit of his work at the Museum of the City of New York, saw there's a very high, what the city was like at that point. That there needs to be an ongoing process of recording just everyday life in the city, to make sure people remember that.
Well, it's great that we actually have some masters keeping this legacy alive and continuing it into the future for next generations. And speaking of buildings being flesh of our city, there is another part of this living organism that I know you paid great attention to and devoted a big part of your life in many ways. It's our blood vessel system, our subway system, one of the greatest in the world, and actually don't believe Londoners when they say there's the oldest. We do have the oldest subway underground, specifically.
Well, it's the original subway line, which is the downtown part of the Lexington Avenue line, the 42nd Street shuttle, and the uptown part of the Broadway 7th Avenue line goes back to 1904, which is a pretty long way back. Yeah, and we have some elevated lines in the city that's still even older than that. So it's so having worked New York State Transit for a number of years, and having ridden the subways my entire life, it just seemed natural to me to take photographs of them of the subway stations, subway lines as well.
So, what in this infrastructure is a reason why you devoted significant amount of your attention and your talent to them? What was specifically captivating you in it?
Well, it was a challenge to me to take pictures of the system as without a lot of people in it. It's like that they're part of the landscape, and the people in the background and things like that. I don't go out in the middle of the night to take these pictures. Or it's like I'll wait till a train goes by, or sometimes just I get very lucky. There was one time when I got off of a train at Union Square, which is normally very crowded, and for some reason, it was that part of the platform was empty, and it was like
empty Union Square.
Yeah,
and it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, it was actually right before the rush hour. I said to myself, if I don't get this picture now, I'll never have this opportunity to do it again for the rest of my life.
Quite possible.
And I always carry either I carry my camera with a camera with me, or I use my phone to sometimes get some of the shots as well.
Oh, it's actually a very interesting trend that's happening, that professional photographers starting to increasingly use phones for what I'm calling diary photography.
Yeah.
basically not something they meaning as an exhibition piece, but something they want to keep as a short note on city life.
Well, I've used some shots I've taken with the telephone for part of the show as well. So it just depends on the context, because it's if I use my digital camera, sometimes it takes a little bit too long to set up, and with the phone I can just about get it right away.
Oh, it's
a matter of sometimes it's a matter of being at the right place at the right time to get a picture.
absolutely, and sometimes it's important to press this button right now instead of trying to put together your equipment from a back.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Because when I started out was using my 35mm camera in the subway, I would have to find something to balance the camera on to make sure I had enough light. With the digital camera and with the phone, I don't need that much. I need much less light to work with to get the shot. So it helps out.
So that was the reason why you switched from film to digital?
The fact it costs so much to process film, and so it's like I'd gotten away from that. And my sister, my niece, and my daughter said you have to start using a digital camera, and they were right.
No, I can't agree more.
Yeah.
It's my personal preference as well. Well, as I understand, you didn't just photograph New York subway system, but you also wrote a book about one particular thing related to subway history.
My book is called "The Routes Not Taken: The Trip Through New York City's Unbuilt Subway System," which is about lines that were never built or took on a much different form. The Second Avenue wasn't the only line, and there's a whole interesting history to it.
I definitely should acquire a copy and get your autograph on it. We'll be back after these messages and continue our conversation. We have a few seconds left. right, so we have only a couple of minutes left, and we wanted to mention this building.
Yeah.
The one you said is one of the most beautiful ones in New York.
I would say it's probably the best building in the whole city. It's the best house in the whole city. It's in New Brighton on Staten Island. Just like there's one, I heard about this one street, Pendleton Place, and it's an amazing series of houses there, and this is one of them, and I just for a couple of minutes when I was walking along, I was just standing there looking at it. It was just such an amazing building, this amazing structure to see, and it's something that the owner clearly takes a lot of pride in, really takes care of.
Oh, you should be taking pride in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And,
And that's something that, in general, that I want that in a lot of places, a lot of parts of the city that people do that it's just pride in where they live, and it shows.
well, it's great that there are people who taking good care of treasure they have, but it's even greater than there is somebody who actually locate something like this and make sure to show it from a best point of view, because the building is beautiful, but your photo really gives it justice. So in the last minutes, we're normally asking our guests to give an advice to the audience, and in your case, I would like to ask you, what is your advice to make buildings which look average to look so interesting, to find them? How you do it?
I just look for the right situation, for the right angle, for the right shot, and to look for what appeals to me. You know, that's one of the things with not going for the touristy stuff. That you look for what appeals to you, and in general, be curious about what's around the next corner.
So you actually answered, besides my question, another one, how to make sure that your photographs don't look touristy and look original. You just need to photograph what you believe you need to photograph, not what you believe people would be interested to see.
Yeah. The whole idea is to photograph your vision of what the city, what's right for, of what you want to see.
So basically, preserving your vision is the key.
That's right.
Well, it's probably the greatest advice you can give in every trade profession, and I can't find any way better to end this episode. Thank you very much, Joe,
my pleasure.
for joining us. It was really great, educational, and truly inspirational. And I will look for this book. I want this your autograph on it. Thank you very much.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you. I'm actually wrong.
I hope you found that worth watching as much as I did. I'm Mark Unger for Roundtable. Thanks for watching.